I am Marcie, 29 years old, and after years of fighting invisibility in my own family, I never imagined my tech company, my greatest achievement, would become my greatest burden. The revolutionary app I'd sacrificed sleep, relationships, and my very sanity to build became the epicenter of a brutal confrontation at my younger brother Wade's graduation dinner. My parents, Connie and Leonard, who never failed to see ambition as arrogance, demanded I sell my company and give them the money to bail out their latest financial disaster. My refusal earned me a swift and vicious exile from my parents. My father's face reddened in barely contained rage while my mother sobbed dramatically, declaring to the whole restaurant that I was ungrateful, selfish, and Wade and my older sister Delaney sat silent, their carefully hidden smirks glowing faintly beneath the chandelier's soft amber. "You've always put yourself first, Marcie. You're nothing to us now," my father spat, his voice dripping with contempt as diners glanced over awkwardly, eager yet embarrassed spectators to our family drama. I didn't cry, didn't scream or plead. Instead, their bitter ultimatum lit a spark deep within me. The humiliation wasn't new, but this time it triggered something powerful and fierce. My silent resolution that night would change everything. I would become successful beyond their wildest dreams, and my success would be mine alone, untouchable by their manipulative. But before I tell you how that fateful evening unfolded, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you've ever overcome something for your family, because you have no idea what they'll do once their greed outweighs their. Looking back, it's obvious I never fit the mold. My family was traditional in all the toxic ways tradition can imply. Connie and Leonard valued outward appearances, meticulously curated for their suburban friends. Wade and Delaney were perfect children on paper. Wade was the star soccer player turned law student, charming everyone with his easy smile. Delaney married early, seamlessly slipping into the role of devoted mother and wife, living just a few blocks from our parents' home. And me? I was always the outlier. The ambitious daughter who built model rockets in the garage, coding late into the night, imagining a life bigger and brighter than our sleepy neighborhood could offer. Where Wade and Delaney followed predictable paths, I charted my own course with fervor that frightened my parents. Connie would sigh theatrically, lamenting to neighbors, "I just don't understand Marcie. Why can't she be more like Delaney? Such a sweet, quiet girl." Leonard, meanwhile, actively dismissed my accomplishments, brushing aside my straight-A report cards and regional science fair wins, with barely a grunt of acknowledgement. Yet somehow, that dismissal fueled me. Each ignored achievement hardened my resolve. Every praise withheld became a silent challenge, prove them wrong, again and again until my success was undeniable. Still, the loneliness hurt. Growing up invisible while Wade and Delaney soaked in endless praise left wounds I could never quite heal. Even now, on the cusp of turning 30, the ache of invisibility lingered, quiet but insistent, whispering in darker moments that perhaps my parents were right, perhaps success was truly meaningless if it couldn't buy their approval. My journey with tech entrepreneurship began almost accidentally. Just an idea scribbled hastily on a napkin in my dorm during a sleepless night. But that idea blossomed into something extraordinary. An app that streamlined personal finance management with ruthless simplicity. Users loved it, investors poured in. Quietly, diligently, away from the spotlight my family always craved, I built an empire, a secret victory known only to a trusted circle. For a time, I felt invincible, insulated by my hidden success. But secrets have a way of clawing their way into the open, and mine was no exception. The night my family discovered the true scope of my achievements, the night of Wade's graduation dinner, everything I built, everything I'd carefully hidden suddenly became a target. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once, standing on the brink of revelation, knowing that I held the power to reshape my family's perception of me forever. Yet I underestimated their willingness to exploit that very success, to twist it into something ugly and greedy, and I underestimated just how far they'd go to reclaim the control they felt slipping from their grasp. As I walked out of that restaurant, my father's angry shouts still ringing in my ears, my mother's tear-streaked face burned in my memory, and my siblings' smug silence etched deep in my heart, I knew the time had finally come to claim my life fully as my own. No apologies, no looking back, and definitely no surrender. Their rejection was painful, but it was also liberation, a breaking point I never knew I needed. From that night forward, nothing would ever be the same again. My earliest memory of invisibility stretches back to when I was 7, standing proudly at the edge of our driveway, gripping the trophy I'd won at the junior science fair. First place, my name engraved beautifully along the polished base. It was heavier than I expected, gleaming golden and reflecting the sunlight perfectly. I remember thinking, now they'll finally see me. My heart pounded as I waited for Connie and Leonard to return from Wade's soccer game. But when the car pulled up, Wade sprang out holding his medal for participation, and the entire driveway burst into applause. Leonard swung Wade onto his shoulders, cheering so loudly the neighbors peeked out their curtains. Connie fussed over Wade, smoothing his hair, snapping endless photos with an excitement I'd never seen her direct toward me. Finally, Leonard's eyes fell on my trophy. His lips twisted into something resembling a smile, but his voice betrayed indifference. "Nice job, Marcie, but you could have come to support your brother. Family first, remember?" My chest tightened. The trophy suddenly felt too heavy. Wade glanced at me with a casual grin, unaware of the wound he'd just reopened. Delaney watched from the porch, her perfect curls catching the sun, silent approval of the family dynamic etched clearly in her smug smile. As the years passed, my accomplishments continued to vanish beneath Wade and Delaney's shadow. When I made the robotics club in high school, Leonard shrugged, unimpressed. But when Wade scored a goal at a minor game, our entire living room erupted, like he just won the World Cup. My mother's gushing praise always stung, but Leonard's dismissive silence was somehow worse. Cold, detached, clinical. It carved deep channels of self-doubt within me, until my own successes barely registered even to myself. The hardest part was knowing that my siblings didn't even try. Wade coasted effortlessly through life, propelled by a charm so casual he barely noticed the trail of privilege he left behind. Delaney's achievements, perfect wedding, perfect home, perfect child, came easily too, her life meticulously crafted to earn Connie's nod of approval. They thrived in the spotlight our parents reserved exclusively for them, oblivious or indifferent to the cost of their comfort, my gradual erasure. In high school, I sought solace in books and computers. Code became my language, mathematics my refuge. Each new skill became armor against the indifference at home, layers protecting me from Connie's sighs, Leonard's shrugs, and my siblings' smug assurance of their superiority. If my parents wouldn't acknowledge me, I'd find validation elsewhere, quietly and methodically proving my worth again and again. At 17, I developed my first app, a simple tool for tracking homework assignments. It gained a modest following among my classmates, but my parents barely glanced up when I excitedly tried to show them. "That's cute," Connie murmured, eyes glued to Wade's latest soccer trophy. Leonard didn't even turn his head from the evening news. That day, I made a promise to myself. Never again would their approval define my worth. Every ignored achievement sharpened my resolve. If invisibility was my fate within this family, then I would embrace it. Invisibility would become my superpower, allowing me to build without interference, to create without limits. I would let them underestimate me until the day came when they simply couldn't anymore. College was a blur of sleepless nights, coding marathons, and whispered dreams of escape. I saw my family only during holidays, tense dinners filled with backhanded compliments and reminders of my strange obsession with technology. Delaney never missed an opportunity to mention her domestic bliss. Wade eagerly shared law school anecdotes, while my parents nodded approvingly, quietly reinforcing the message I'd heard my entire life. I was the odd one out, the anomaly they'd long stopped trying to understand. But as painful as those visits were, each dismissal strengthened my determination. The silence that once felt punishing began to feel liberating. If my parents refused to see my potential, then it belonged entirely to me. My ambition grew ferocious, fed by a lifetime of disregard, blossoming into a drive so intense even I struggled to control it. Deep down, I knew the day would come when the world would see me clearly, and I could finally shed the suffocating invisibility of my past. Little did I know, as I quietly amassed successes behind the scenes, my parents' disregard would soon shift to desperation. their casual indifference would become twisted into something darker and greedier. And that shift would force me, finally, to confront the full extent of their manipulation head-on. My invisibility was about to end in spectacular fashion, but nothing prepared me for just how complicated visibility would become. It happened in a quiet moment, one of those rare, seemingly insignificant instances that turn into the defining crossroads of your life. I remember it vividly. I was 24, freshly graduated, and still navigating the awkward space between potential and reality, working late into the night at a small, dimly lit cafe, my laptop humming gently beneath my fingertips. Rain drizzled softly against the window, tracing thin lines of clarity through a blurred reflection. I'd spent weeks agonizing over the final touches of an app I'd been building, a revolutionary concept that blended financial tracking with automated savings, intuitive budgeting, and personalized investment advice. It was ambitious, maybe even foolishly so, but every nerve in my body thrummed with a sense of rightness, an inner certainty I'd rarely experienced before. The cafe was empty, save for one tired barista, whose indifferent gaze occasionally flickered my way as she restocked shelves. Her presence felt comforting. She didn't know me, or care about my failures. She was a neutral observer, a witness who couldn't judge because she knew nothing of my past, or my family's disappointments. That anonymity provided an odd sense of freedom, allowing me to focus completely, free from the shadow of my parents' unspoken disapproval, or Wade and Delaney's effortless achievements. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, the cursor blinking steadily on the submit button that would launch my creation into the digital world. My heartbeat echoed softly in my ears as hesitation crept into my thoughts. Years of conditioning surged forward in a painful whisper. What if it's not enough? What if you're not enough? Just then, my phone buzzed gently against the table. Connie's name flashed across the screen, a reminder of the carefully scheduled check-ins she insisted on maintaining, each conversation thick with subtle judgment masked as motherly concern. I ignored the call, my jaw tightening reflexively. The contrast couldn't have been clearer: either continue to chase an approval I'd never fully earn, or step boldly into the unknown, risking everything for the chance to be authentically myself. In that instant, I pressed the button. It was done. A breath escaped my lungs, long and shaky. The screen displayed the simple confirmation: upload complete, your app is now live. The silence around me intensified. No applause erupted, no fireworks lit the sky. But inside, a quiet storm of triumph brewed. I'd done something entirely my own, invisible yet undeniably powerful. For the next several months, the app grew quietly but rapidly. The initial feedback was overwhelmingly positive. Users were thrilled by how it simplified their finances. As downloads surged, investors noticed. Meetings followed, then funding rounds, each step building momentum and reinforcing my confidence. Before long, what started as a whispered dream in a lonely cafe had become a powerful, thriving enterprise. Throughout it all, I kept the truth hidden from my family. At gatherings, I played my part, the eccentric daughter whose mysterious job seemed perpetually vague. Leonard would shake his head at me, muttering under his breath about wasted education. Connie would cluck sympathetically, gently probing for details that would inevitably disappoint her. Wade and Delaney would exchange knowing glances, amused and dismissive of my apparent lack of direction. They had no idea I'd grown into a leader, quietly steering an innovative team, fostering a culture of creativity and genuine support, values utterly foreign in my own home. They had no inkling of my growing net worth, my expanding influence, the future I was carefully sculpting with every decision made in solitude. And yet, despite this secret triumph, every dinner with my family chipped away at my peace. Their ignorance felt both protective and poisonous, shielding my achievements while quietly affirming the narrative they'd spun around me for years. Marcie, the strange outsider who could never quite measure up. Keeping my success hidden protected me from their manipulative greed, but the weight of secrecy grew heavy. Deep down, I yearned for acknowledgement, not approval exactly, but recognition. The silence that once empowered me began to suffocate. Then the inevitable happened. Word started to spread beyond my controlled circle. Industry whispers grew louder. Articles praising my company surfaced in influential journals. Invitations to exclusive networking events arrived. The very invisibility that once gave me strength began to unravel. My secret was becoming unsustainable. The tipping point came swiftly, an email arriving unexpectedly one morning from a global conglomerate expressing interest in acquiring my company. It was staggering, validating, and terrifying in equal measure. The offer promised immense wealth, freedom, and recognition, everything I'd secretly dreamed about yet feared would shatter the delicate illusion I'd built with my family. It wasn't the offer itself that worried me most, though. It was the timing. Wade's graduation dinner loomed ominously on my calendar, and the thought of stepping into that family gauntlet, this time with the world finally acknowledging my worth, filled me with dread. There would be no going back. My invisibility was at an end. Whether I was ready or not, a storm was coming, and my carefully guarded secret would finally collide with the family that had spent a lifetime dismissing me. The morning of Wade's graduation dinner felt like standing on the brink of something inevitable. The company's acquisition was scheduled to close in mere days, a life-changing merger that would publicly cement my status as a self-made success, transforming the quiet power of my hidden empire into an undeniable reality. Yet, the excitement that should have buzzed through me was buried beneath dread. Tonight, at that family dinner table, the truth I'd carefully guarded would finally explode into the open, exposing everything I'd worked tirelessly to build. As I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, dread twisted inside my stomach, relentless and cold. I brushed my hair slowly, mechanically, attempting to silence the nervous thoughts racing through my mind. How would Connie and Leonard react once they discovered their invisible daughter was worth millions? Would Wade's smugness falter, or would he dismiss my success just as easily as our parents had dismissed every achievement before? And what about Delaney? Would she feel threatened by a sister she'd spent a lifetime subtly belittling? I shook my head, attempting to chase away these intrusive thoughts. Tonight was Wade's night. He'd completed law school, and the family celebration was non-negotiable. My parents had booked their favorite upscale restaurant, a public stage perfect for their carefully curated performances. I could already picture Leonard's proud boasting, Connie's glowing praise, and Wade soaking up every ounce of attention. Meanwhile, I'd be expected to nod politely, blending into the background as usual, silent and invisible, just another supporting character in their narrative. But this time would be different. I knew it deep within my bones. Tonight marked a turning point, either a final surrender to my family's toxic expectations or a powerful assertion of my independence. I'd already decided to reveal my success casually, simply, without fanfare or aggression. Yet, the knowledge of how fiercely my family might retaliate filled me with anxiety. The stakes had never felt higher, and the risk of their greed swallowing up my achievement was painfully real. Arriving early at the restaurant, I waited quietly at the table. The room was lit softly, warm lighting bathing the elegant decor in comforting tones, an ironic contrast to the chill already spreading through my limbs. The waiter offered a sympathetic smile, sensing my nervousness, though oblivious to its cause. I returned a weak, appreciative nod. My family entered moments later, a whirlwind of loud greetings and exaggerated warmth. Connie swept toward me, engulfing me briefly in an insincere hug. "Marcie, dear, how lovely you actually showed up on time," she said with mild surprise, her eyes already drifting toward Wade, whose arrival had triggered a burst of applause from nearby tables. Recognizing the star of the night, Wade grinned confidently, Delaney fluttered to his side, smiling proudly, and Leonard clasped his shoulder firmly, pride radiating from him like heat. I stood forgotten at the table's edge, observing this painfully familiar family dynamic. Conversation quickly centered around Wade, questions about his future plans, praise over his promising prospects. Leonard glanced at me occasionally, offering half-hearted attempts at including me, each time swiftly drowned by Delaney's anecdotes about her picture-perfect family life. I barely registered their words, my mind caught in loops of anxiety. My phone buzzed periodically, reminders of the pending merger deal, each vibration a silent confirmation of my success, and an uncomfortable reminder of how easily it might all collapse under my family's scrutiny. Finally, the conversation shifted to me, reluctantly, dismissively, as Leonard sighed and turned toward me. "And what about you, Marcie? Any luck finding a stable job yet?" I felt my heartbeat quicken, the familiar sting of his casual dismissal cutting deep. For a fleeting moment, I almost backed down, tempted to play along, quietly endure the humiliation. But instead, a surge of stubborn determination pushed me forward. "Actually, Dad," I began, keeping my voice steady, "I've been running a successful tech company. We're about to finalize a major merger." Silence descended abruptly, thick and uncomfortable. Connie's eyes widened in disbelief. Leonard frowned suspiciously, and Wade's confident expression flickered briefly, his smile slipping. Only Delaney managed to hide her shock, though her carefully neutral expression still betrayed unease. Leonard recovered first, his skepticism evident. "Really, Marcie? And you didn't think we'd care to know?" "I assumed you wouldn't," I said quietly, meeting his eyes directly. "You've never seemed particularly interested in my achievements." Connie's gaze hardened, her voice tight with barely suppressed irritation. "Well, congratulations, I suppose. Though a little heads up would have been polite. Family loyalty matters, Marcie." I bit back a bitter laugh, their hypocrisy almost comical, if it weren't so painful. My phone vibrated once again, urgent now, reminding me that my true life was far beyond this cramped, judgmental circle. But tonight, here at Wade's dinner, under the bright lights of this elegant restaurant, a battle had begun, one I'd spent years dreading yet secretly craving. Tonight, my quiet secret would shatter loudly, ending my invisibility forever. The question wasn't if my family would accept my success, it was whether I was finally strong enough to stop needing them to. The awkward silence hung heavily over the table, punctuated only by the faint clink of silverware and distant murmurs from other diners. Connie cleared her throat sharply, breaking the tension with deliberate intent. Her eyes narrowed, a coolness settling into her expression as she considered me anew, perhaps genuinely for the first time in years. But it wasn't warmth or pride reflected there, it was suspicion, sharpened by envy and fear of losing control. "So, Marcie," Connie began carefully, a false smile dancing at the edges of her lips, "a tech company? How ambitious of you! Though I'm sure it's just a little startup project, nothing like your brother's promising career in law. Stability is important, dear." Leonard grunted softly, nodding along as he cut methodically into his steak, not bothering to glance up. She always preferred pipe dreams over practicality, not surprising. A wave of irritation prickled beneath my skin, but I steadied myself. Years of enduring these subtle barbs had taught me restraint, patience even, but tonight felt particularly grating, each snide remark sharper than usual. Wade chuckled lightly from across the table, sipping his wine casually. "Yeah, Marcie, are you sure this whole tech thing is legit? I mean, we wouldn't want you to embarrass yourself." Delaney laughed softly, disguising cruelty beneath a silky veneer of sisterly concern. "You have always been a dreamer, Marce. It's charming, really. Just don't forget us little people when you're a billionaire," she teased sarcastically, earning amused smirks around the table. My fingers tightened discreetly around the edge of the tablecloth, the quiet rage within me simmering dangerously. "I won't," I replied evenly, matching Delaney's fake sweetness with controlled calmness. Family is important, after all. Leonard finally lifted his gaze, eyes coldly appraising as they met mine. "Speaking of family, Marcie, your mother and I have been discussing your place in ours lately." He paused meaningfully, his voice taking on a grim edge. "We feel it's time you understood what it means to truly belong, contribution, loyalty, and obedience. You've always struggled to understand that." A bitter taste filled my mouth, realization dawning sharply. This wasn't merely a dinner. It was an ambush, carefully orchestrated to force my compliance, to push me back into the neat box they'd designed for my life. Anger surged, but I kept my expression neutral, refusing to grant them the satisfaction of knowing they'd rattled me. "Contribution?" I repeated evenly, holding Leonard's stare defiantly. "You mean the bailouts I've quietly provided every time your investments failed? Loyalty like the countless times I've stayed silent while you praised Wade and Delaney endlessly, ignoring my every accomplishment?" Connie gasped audibly, scandalized by my open defiance. Leonard's face flushed, rage simmering just beneath his carefully composed surface. Wade and Delaney exchanged startled glances, discomfort rippling subtly through their carefully constructed facades. Leonard leaned forward menacingly, his voice low, nearly a growl. "Watch your tone, Marcie. We've indulged your insolence long enough. This family has sacrificed plenty for you. It's time you showed proper gratitude." The absurdity nearly made me laugh aloud. Gratitude? For what exactly? The dismissals, the neglect, or the endless judgment that defined my childhood? But laughter would only enrage him further. I chose silence, meeting his challenge with calm, unyielding resolve. Connie's voice shook slightly, anger mingled with theatrical sadness. "You've always resented us, haven't you, Marcie? Always thinking you were somehow better than the rest of us. But you're mistaken. Success doesn't make you better, it only makes you lonelier." Delaney smirked, jumping in eagerly. Maybe loneliness suits her, Mom. She always preferred being alone, isolated behind her computers. Their words stung, landing exactly as intended, yet something within me shifted. Each jab, each sarcastic dismissal only reinforced my resolve. Tonight was different. I was no longer defenseless. Their contempt was nothing compared to the strength I'd quietly forged in the shadows of their neglect. Just then, Wade leaned back comfortably, arrogant confidence dripping from his words. "Let's face it, Marcie, you've always needed our approval more than we've needed you. If this little tech thing is real, it's probably just a fluke." His words ignited fresh anger, but before I could respond, my phone vibrated urgently, interrupting the painful barrage. I glanced quickly, heart skipping as I read the message silently. "Merger confirmed. Congratulations, Marcie, we're thrilled to welcome you officially." The irony was profound, almost cinematic. Here, in this elegant restaurant, trapped beneath the contemptuous scrutiny of my family, my greatest victory had been quietly finalized. My empire, my creation, was now real and unstoppable. The painful humiliation they'd orchestrated suddenly felt small and powerless in comparison. I carefully replaced my phone, meeting each of their expectant gazes calmly, feeling strangely detached from their cruelty. The gauntlet they'd laid had failed. Their contempt, so carefully cultivated to diminish me, had instead strengthened my resolve. They didn't know it yet, but the true reckoning was moments away. And this time it wasn't my humiliation they would witness, but their own. The air grew thick with a tension so palpable I wondered briefly if others around us could sense it. Curious strangers stealing covert glances, drawn irresistibly into our quiet drama. But I didn't care anymore about the discomfort of spectators. All my life, my parents had thrived on appearances, carefully scripting our family image for public approval. Tonight, their polished facade was finally cracking wide open. Leonard straightened abruptly in his chair, eyes narrowing dangerously. "Marcie," he said, voice flat and cold, each syllable slicing the silence. "Since you clearly think you're better than us, perhaps it's time to make our situation clear." Connie visibly stiffened beside him, lips pressed into a thin, angry line. Wade and Delaney leaned subtly forward, hungry for the spectacle, their eyes glinting in anticipation. Leonard cleared his throat theatrically, deliberately raising his voice so neighboring tables could overhear, turning humiliation into a public act of discipline. "You've never respected this family or its values," he began, tone dripping with barely contained contempt. "You've chosen selfishness over duty, pride over humility, arrogance over gratitude. So let me make it very clear. From this moment forward, you are officially cut off, disowned. Your mother and I refuse to continue indulging your disrespect." His words landed like physical blows, echoing harshly across the elegantly set table. Connie's expression hardened further, a silent agreement etched into her features. Wade's smirk widened cruelly, while Delaney's gaze held a flash of triumphant satisfaction. They had finally done it, the ultimate punishment designed to strip me of dignity, status, and belonging. Around us, a hush settled heavily, the restaurant suddenly acutely aware of our private crisis unfolding publicly. I felt heat flood my face, humiliation briefly threatening to choke me. The raw wound of rejection so publicly inflicted stung sharply, threatening tears. Yet something unexpected stirred inside me. A fierce resistance, a stubborn refusal to allow their cruelty to define me again. Connie leaned forward slightly, voice trembling dramatically. "You've broken our hearts, Marcie. We've done everything for you, and still you remain ungrateful. I truly hope your success comforts you when you find yourself completely alone." Wade chuckled quietly, unable to contain his enjoyment. "Guess you're officially the black sheep now, huh, Marcie?" Delaney laughed softly, glancing around the table with theatrical sympathy. "It's really sad, Marcie. You had so much potential. Maybe you'll finally learn humility. I absorbed each barb silently, watching their faces closely, searching for even a hint of genuine sadness or regret. But all I saw was smug satisfaction, greed, and bitter resentment. Their true colors, long suspected, now brutally clear. My father's gaze remained cold, unwavering. You have made your choice. Remember that tonight, when your money runs dry and no one else tolerates your arrogance. I felt strangely numb. All these years, despite their neglect, a part of me had clung stubbornly to the faint hope of acceptance. Now, as they publicly cast me out, I understood clearly that acceptance had never been possible. Not from people whose love was transactional, conditional, manipulative. Yet, oddly, I felt no sorrow, only an icy clarity. My success terrified them precisely because it represented my independence from their toxic grasp. Their harsh words were merely the desperate grasping of people losing control. Just as Leonard began to rise, signaling an end to their performance, my phone vibrated insistently again, louder this time against the table. My heart jolted. A strange feeling of excitement and vindication surging through me. Without hesitation, I lifted it to my ear. "Marcie speaking," I said calmly, my voice steady despite the violent storm swirling around me. The voice on the other end spoke clearly, professionally, yet excitement danced at the edges. "Marcie, the announcement just went live. Congratulations. You're officially the CEO of one of the biggest tech acquisitions of the decade. The media's already buzzing. Expect major coverage by tomorrow." I blinked, absorbing the weight of this stunning news. My heart hammered fiercely, and yet, a strange calm spread within me. Around the table, confusion and curiosity flickered briefly through my family's faces, replaced quickly by suspicion and anxiety. Ending the call, I placed the phone gently back on the table, feeling strangely powerful, untouchable even. "It appears my arrogance has finally paid off," I said quietly, my voice clear and steady. Leonard scowled, uncertainty creeping into his expression for the first time. "What exactly do you mean by that, Marcie?" I met his gaze calmly, allowing myself a slow, deliberate smile. "It means your timing is perfect, Dad. You've officially cut ties just moments before learning your daughter, your invisible, arrogant daughter, is now worth millions." A stunned silence spread around the table. Connie's mouth opened soundlessly, shock etched vividly across her face. Wade's arrogant smirk vanished instantly, replaced by a quiet panic. Delaney paled, eyes wide with disbelief. Leonard struggled visibly, composure slipping, desperately trying to regain control. "This is some trick," he growled, though his voice betrayed doubt. "You're just afraid?" I interrupted quietly, holding his gaze firmly. "No, I'm finally done hiding who I am. You've chosen greed and control over family and love. Now you get exactly what you've always deserved: nothing." Standing, I felt powerful, stronger and clearer than I had ever imagined possible. Leaving them there, silent and humiliated, I walked confidently toward the exit. Tonight, their cruelty had finally stripped away all illusions. I was free. Stepping out of the restaurant into the cool evening air felt surreal, almost dreamlike. The hum of distant traffic provided a comforting distraction as I stood on the sidewalk, heart still pounding fiercely in my chest. My parents' stunned expressions, frozen mid-realization, lingered vividly in my mind. Tonight had changed everything. My carefully hidden success finally unmasked, their manipulative games publicly defeated. Yet beneath my relief and triumph, something fragile and bittersweet lingered. Suddenly, my phone exploded with notifications, vibrating urgently in rapid bursts. Texts from colleagues, friends, investors, all echoing congratulations, excitement, and admiration. The news was spreading fast. My app had officially become part of a tech giant, and overnight, I'd become a recognized figure in the industry. Each message served as a powerful reminder of how real my achievement truly was. But as I stood there, scrolling numbly through messages filled with emojis and capital letters, the familiar sting of loneliness crept in again. Success, it seemed, was a strange mix of triumph and isolation. For all my quiet ambition, part of me had always hoped to celebrate moments like this with family, real family, people who would cheer without envy, who wouldn't seek to exploit or diminish me. Tonight's dinner had extinguished that hope brutally and publicly. Just then a familiar ringtone broke through my thoughts. Gentle, rhythmic, comforting. It was Cassie, my closest friend since college, someone who had supported me quietly through every painful family dinner, every hidden victory. Answering immediately, I heard her voice, warm, excited, slightly breathless. "Marcie, I've just seen the news. Are you okay? Where are you?" The genuine concern in Cassie's voice warmed me instantly, melting away some of the icy numbness lingering from the confrontation. "I'm okay," I answered softly, hearing the tremor in my own voice for the first time. "Actually better than okay. It finally happened, Cass." She laughed, relieved yet curious. "I saw. But you sound shaky. Are you sure you're all right? Did something happen?" I hesitated briefly before the words tumbled out. "My family disowned me, officially, tonight, right before the announcement." Silence filled the line momentarily, heavy with Cassie's shock. Then her voice returned gently, fiercely protective. "Oh, Marcie, I'm so sorry. Where are you right now? Don't move, I'm coming to get you." Minutes later, Cassie's familiar car pulled up to the curb. Her smile, bright yet edged with worry, immediately reassured me. Sliding into the passenger seat, I felt safe, the painful echoes of family dinner fading slightly in her comforting presence. Driving quietly toward her apartment, Cassie finally broke the silence, her voice cautious yet gentle. "How are you really feeling, Marcie?" I considered her question carefully, words spilling out raw and unguarded. "Honestly, relieved, free in a way, but I'm also hurt, more deeply than I imagined possible. All these years I've known my parents didn't truly support me, but tonight, seeing their greed so clearly, it finally shattered the last bit of hope I'd held on to." Cassie reached out briefly, squeezing my hand warmly before returning her gaze to the road. "Maybe that's exactly what you needed. Now there's no more pretending. No more hiding who you are or what you've achieved." I nodded silently, knowing she was right. Painful as it was, tonight had forced me to confront the truth I'd avoided. My parents' love had always been conditional. My worth in their eyes was defined by what I could offer, not who I was. Cassie understood this better than anyone. She too had navigated her own difficult family dynamics, finding strength in chosen relationships instead of blood ties. As we entered her cozy apartment, I was greeted by the comforting sight of our mutual friends gathered spontaneously, each face glowing warmly, their excitement palpable. Amy, quirky and fiercely loyal, bounded forward first, hugging me tightly. Darren, ever calm, offered a reassuring nod, handing me a glass of champagne with quiet pride. Even gentle Tyler, who rarely showed strong emotion, smiled broadly, genuinely happy. Cassie raised her glass dramatically, her voice playful yet earnest. "To Marcie, the bravest, most quietly determined badass we know. Congratulations on finally showing the world what we've always known you're capable of." Laughter and cheers filled the room, warmth blooming deeply in my chest. For the first time tonight, tears prickled my eyes, this time from overwhelming gratitude rather than humiliation or anger. I realized in that moment, surrounded by genuine smiles, sincere congratulations, and unconditional support, this was the family I'd truly needed all along. They'd seen my strength long before anyone else, quietly believing in me during every struggle, every setback. Their pride wasn't conditional or manipulative. It was genuine, supportive, unwavering. As the laughter quieted, Cassie leaned closer, whispering softly, "You know you're not alone anymore, right? We're your real family, always have been." Those words resonated powerfully, healing something deep within me. Tonight's painful confrontation had forced open old wounds, but it had also opened a door I'd kept closed for too long, allowing myself to fully embrace the people who loved me unconditionally. Standing there in Cassie's cozy apartment, champagne bubbles dancing lightly in my glass, I finally felt visible, truly seen and appreciated for the first time in my life. Tonight, in the aftermath of my most painful rejection, I had found something far more valuable: genuine acceptance. And this chosen family would remain long after my parents' manipulative games had faded into nothingness. In the days that followed, my phone became a battleground, lighting up incessantly with frantic messages and missed calls, all from numbers that once carried authority over my emotions. Connie's voicemails dripped with thinly veiled desperation. Leonard's stern texts vacillated wildly between threats and awkward apologies, and even Wade reached out, his confident charm tinged now with palpable discomfort. But the most surprising and painful attempt came from Delaney, whose carefully cultivated air of superiority had finally crumbled into awkward pleas disguised as casual interest. Yet, I felt oddly detached, as if watching their frantic scramble unfold from behind thick glass, their words muffled and distorted by years of manipulation. My silence spoke volumes, an act of quiet rebellion more powerful than angry words could ever be. Finally, one afternoon my phone vibrated with a familiar ringtone. A FaceTime request from Connie. I hesitated only briefly before accepting, knowing the time had come to face their hypocrisy head-on. Connie's face appeared on the screen, perfectly made up yet marred by anxious lines around her eyes. Behind her, Leonard hovered nervously, his face pinched tightly in forced civility. I almost laughed. This sudden, brittle politeness was a stark contrast to the venom they'd wielded so publicly just days ago. "Marcie," Connie began softly, attempting a motherly tone she'd rarely used with sincerity. "We've been worried sick about you. I think we need to clear the air. We've all said things we regret." Leonard shifted impatiently, his discomfort evident. "Look, Marcie, let's not drag this out. We made a mistake, we didn't fully understand your situation." Their rehearsed attempts at reconciliation felt almost insulting, their manipulative intentions obvious beneath the thin veneer of remorse. Yet, I remained silent, patiently allowing their discomfort to grow. Connie's smile faltered slightly, panic edging her voice now. "Please, sweetheart, we're family, let's put all this behind us." I took a slow breath, steadying myself before speaking clearly, calmly, firmly. "Family? That's an interesting word coming from you both." Leonard flinched, eyes narrowing defensively. "We've always supported you, Marcie, even when you made it difficult. Can't you see we're trying here?" I shook my head slowly, a bitter smile forming. "Supported me? Is that how you remember it? Because I recall endless dismissals, constant ridicule, and finally being publicly disowned when I refused to finance your reckless choices. Your sudden interest in reconciliation feels oddly timed, doesn't it?" Connie glanced nervously toward Leonard, panic rising visibly. "Marcie, please. This is painful enough without dredging up past mistakes." My anger flared sharply, carefully controlled but unmistakable. "Painful? You publicly humiliated me, declared me a disgrace, and cast me aside the moment I refused to be your financial lifeline. Now that my success is undeniable, suddenly I'm family again? How convenient." Leonard's facade shattered, his voice rising angrily. "We raised you, Marcie, we provided for you. Everything you have started with us." His arrogance snapped something within me, unleashing words I'd long suppressed. "No, Dad, everything I have I built despite you. Despite your neglect, your disdain, your constant refusal to see me as anything but a burden, I owe you nothing." A tense silence stretched painfully, Connie's eyes shimmering with frustrated tears, Leonard frozen in stunned silence. Behind them, I glimpsed Wade and Delaney hovering awkwardly, clearly overhearing every word. I wondered briefly if they felt remorse, or merely fear, knowing their own value to our parents could crumble as swiftly as mine had. Delaney stepped forward, her voice unsteady. "Marcie, we really didn't understand what you were building. Maybe we were wrong." I sighed softly, sadness mixing briefly with my anger. "Maybe you were, Delaney, but you never even tried to understand. You enjoyed watching me struggle because it made you feel superior." Wade interjected hastily, confidence strained yet present. "Look, we get it, Marcie. You've won. Clearly you've succeeded more than anyone expected. So let's just move forward." His careless words sparked fresh anger, but I steadied my voice deliberately. "This isn't a game, Wade. It's not about winning or losing. It's about dignity, respect, and genuine love. Things none of you ever gave me." Leonard snapped, frustration boiling over. "Enough. Are you seriously prepared to walk away from your family?" I met his furious gaze steadily, clarity filling my chest. "No, Dad, I'm walking toward my family, the people who've genuinely loved and supported me. What I'm walking away from is hypocrisy, greed, and manipulation. I refuse to enable your exploitation anymore." Connie reached toward the screen desperately, her voice trembling. "Marcie, please reconsider. We're sorry." I shook my head slowly, gently yet firmly. "You're sorry now because you want something I can provide. But family should never be conditional, and love shouldn't hinge on usefulness. You've made your choice clear for years. Now I've made mine." I ended the call firmly, their stunned expressions fading abruptly into darkness. Sitting back, a deep exhale escaped me. The confrontation left me raw yet strangely liberated, a sense of finality settling gently around my heart. My family had chosen their path, and now, finally, I'd chosen mine. Outside, the setting sun painted the city skyline in warm golden hues. In that moment, I felt lighter, clearer, stronger, free at last from the toxic shadows of manipulation and conditional love. The pain lingered, but alongside it was something new, something powerful. A quiet pride, rooted deeply in the hard-earned truth of who I had become. Tonight marked more than a confrontation. It was a declaration, a powerful affirmation that the family we choose is far more important than the one we're given. A week later, I found myself seated around Cassie's weathered oak dining table, laughter and conversation flowing effortlessly. Warm, golden evening sunlight filtered softly through gauzy curtains, illuminating the faces of the friends who had become my chosen family. Cassie refilled glasses of wine, smiling broadly as Darren recounted a hilarious story from our early startup days, back when success seemed distant, a faint dream we all quietly chased together. Amy laughed loudly, her carefree spirit infectious. Tyler chuckled quietly, eyes bright with gentle amusement. This dinner felt worlds apart from the toxic chaos of Wade's graduation night. No hidden barbs, no strained politeness masking cruelty, just genuine friendship rooted deeply in mutual respect and understanding. Cassie turned to me suddenly, her eyes sparkling warmly. "Marcie, do you remember those nights at the cafe, wondering if your app would ever go anywhere? Look at you now. Did you ever imagine this?" I smiled softly, the truth catching briefly in my throat. Honestly, no. Back then I was mostly focused on surviving, proving myself, especially to my family. I never imagined how freeing it could be to finally let go of their expectations. Amy nodded knowingly, leaning forward. "That's exactly it, isn't it? You spend your whole life chasing approval from people who are determined never to give it. Then suddenly, you find a place where you're already enough." Her words resonated deeply, voicing something I'd felt but hadn't fully expressed. Exactly. I chased their approval for so long, believing success would finally earn it. But their rejection turned out to be the greatest gift. It forced me to realize that true validation can't come from outside, it has to come from within, and from people who genuinely see your worth. Cassie raised her glass gently, smiling warmly. "To chosen family, the people who genuinely support us." We toasted softly, the quiet clink of glasses echoing gently, each sip of wine deepening the comforting warmth spreading through me. As conversation resumed around the table, my gaze drifted across each face, gratitude swelling within me. Cassie, my anchor through turbulent years whose loyalty never wavered. Amy, fiercely protective and endlessly encouraging. Darren, calm and steadfast through every setback, always believing quietly. Tyler, gentle yet strong, offering steady reassurance exactly when needed most. These people had quietly filled the emotional void my biological family had created. They never demanded perfection or obedience, never manipulated or belittled. Instead, they offered patience, understanding, and genuine support, allowing me space to grow and heal. I thought briefly of Connie and Leonard, of Wade and Delaney, and how different tonight's gathering felt from those strained family dinners I'd endured for years. My biological family thrived on conditional love, their support, transactional, manipulative, and fragile. Yet, here at Cassie's table, love felt authentic, rooted deeply in mutual care and respect. There were no hidden agendas, no undercurrents of jealousy or greed. It felt freeing, profoundly liberating. Later, as dinner ended and everyone drifted comfortably to Cassie's living room, Tyler settled quietly beside me, voice soft and thoughtful. "You know, Marcie, your story, it resonates deeply. I think a lot of us grew up believing love and acceptance were something we had to earn, that our worth depended on approval. Watching you confront that belief, it inspires us all." His words caught me off guard, emotion suddenly thickening my throat. "Honestly, Tyler, I'm still figuring it out. Some days I feel incredibly strong, clear, and powerful. Other days, the rejection feels heavy again. But tonight, being here surrounded by genuine friends, helps more than I can say." He smiled gently, a quiet warmth radiating from his expression. "You deserve this, Marcie. You always did, even when others couldn't see it." His simple words landed softly, stirring something deep within. I felt vulnerable yet strangely comforted, knowing my journey mattered, not just for myself but perhaps for others silently battling similar struggles. Cassie glanced over, noticing our quiet exchange, smiling knowingly. "What's the heart-to-heart about?" Tyler chuckled softly, exchanging an amused glance with me. just reminding Marcie that she's allowed to feel proud, even if her family never gave her permission. Cassie raised an eyebrow playfully, nudging my shoulder gently. He's absolutely right. You've built something incredible, Marcie. Not just a company, but a life you're finally proud of. Own it, celebrate it, you don't need anyone's permission anymore. I nodded silently, Cassie's words settling deeply within me. Tonight marked a new chapter, one rooted in authenticity, free from past burdens and manipulations. My biological family had tried their hardest to break me, to diminish my achievements and control my future, but instead they'd unintentionally pushed me toward true belonging, toward the chosen family whose love healed the wounds they'd inflicted. As laughter and conversation filled Cassie's cozy apartment, I finally understood clearly what genuine family felt like. Safe, supportive, empowering. I was no longer the invisible daughter silently striving to earn approval that would never come. Here, among these people who'd quietly supported me every step of the way, I felt fully visible, fully loved, fully myself. Tonight, for the first time, I realized something profound. Family isn't something you're born into, it's something you build, choose, and nurture. And the family I'd chosen meant more to me than any biological ties ever could. After that dinner at Cassie's, I realized it wasn't enough just to have escaped my family's toxic orbit. I needed to make sure they couldn't reach into my new world and exploit it ever again. My success had become public, making me more visible and vulnerable than ever, and I knew the next steps required clarity, determination, and the establishment of firm boundaries. Over the next few weeks, I carefully set about constructing my fortress. It wasn't built from bitterness or revenge, but from a newfound strength and self-respect. Each decision felt like placing a sturdy brick, deliberately laid to create a protective space around me, one where my family's manipulative influence could no longer penetrate. It began with silence. I refused to respond to any further attempts by Connie or Leonard to contact. Their messages eventually dwindled to bitter silence, replaced occasionally by half-hearted attempts from Wade or Delaney, whose curiosity about my sudden wealth was thinly disguised beneath polite inquiries. I found power in ignoring them, knowing their attention wasn't genuine care but driven purely by envy or curiosity. But silence alone wasn't enough. I needed clear rules for how I'd handle future attempts, inevitable as they were. So with Cassie's encouragement, I drafted a simple yet decisive message, a brief but firm statement establishing the boundaries they were never allowed to cross again. The message was direct. From now on, my life, my success, and my resources are my own. I will no longer tolerate manipulation, demands, or disrespect from any of you. You've shown me clearly who you are. I've chosen a different path. Do not contact me again unless you are prepared to respect these boundaries fully. Sending the message felt strangely liberating. For the first time, I wasn't reacting defensively, but proactively defining my terms, reclaiming power I'd unknowingly surrendered over years of subtle manipulation. As I built these boundaries, I realized my professional life also needed reinforcing. My company's merger thrust me into new territory, surrounded by powerful and ambitious figures whose intentions weren't always transparent. Investors, partners, and new acquaintances approached frequently, their friendly smiles occasionally masking ulterior motives. Learning from my family's duplicity, I quickly became adept at discerning genuine intent from concealed greed. The media attention was intense at first. Interviews, profiles, and speaking engagements flooded my inbox, each request flattering but overwhelming. Initially, I felt obligated to accept them all, almost desperate to prove myself worthy. But then I remembered the lesson learned painfully at my family's hands. My worth wasn't measured by external approval, popularity, or public perception. It was internal, stable, and self-defined. Gradually, I learned to say no, to politely decline invitations that felt inauthentic or exploitative, and to only invest my energy in opportunities that genuinely aligned with my values and vision. Every no felt empowering, like reclaiming another piece of the dignity my family had tried so hard to diminish. Cassie supported me tirelessly through this process. One evening, while sitting together in her cozy kitchen, she quietly observed as I turned down yet another high-profile media invitation. Her expression was thoughtful, proud even, as she softly remarked, "Marcie, you've become so confident, so sure of yourself. It's beautiful to watch." I smiled gratefully, feeling genuinely proud. I spent too many years letting others decide who I was. I'm done with that now. These boundaries aren't about cutting people out, they're about protecting who I've finally allowed myself to become. Cassie nodded warmly, understanding perfectly. Exactly. And you deserve peace, more than anyone I know. Peace. The word resonated deeply, encapsulating everything I'd yearned for yet rarely experienced before. Boundaries brought peace, creating space for genuine growth, healing, and true connections. Even with these protections in place, there were challenging moments. Occasionally, I'd catch glimpses of my family through social media. Wade boasting about a new prestigious law firm position, Delaney carefully curating her perfect suburban life. At first, these glimpses felt unsettling, reopening old wounds of inadequacy and invisibility, but over time, they lost their power, fading quietly into background noise. Instead, I found fulfillment in unexpected places. Quiet evenings with Cassie, Amy, Darren, and Tyler, mentoring young entrepreneurs whose journeys mirrored mine, speaking publicly only at events that championed authenticity and integrity. Each experience reinforced my new identity, built not on family approval or societal expectations, but genuine purpose and meaningful connections. One morning, while sipping coffee on Cassie's sunlit balcony, I received a particularly heartfelt message from a young woman who'd heard my story. She wrote, "Marcie, your courage in setting boundaries inspired me to confront my toxic family. Your story showed me that success isn't just about money or achievements. It's about respect, dignity, and surrounding yourself with people who genuinely love you. Thank you for giving me the strength to reclaim my life." Reading her words, emotion welled, suddenly, overwhelming yet deeply comforting. My journey wasn't isolated. It resonated with others, validating not just my success, but the painful sacrifices made along the way. In that quiet moment, gazing across the awakening city, my fortress felt complete. Not a barrier isolating me from the world, but a foundation supporting the life I'd always deserved, yet never thought possible. These boundaries were never about punishment or revenge. They were about dignity, respect, and finally knowing, deep within myself, that my worth wasn't negotiable. My family might never accept who I'd become, but their approval no longer mattered. I'd built a new life, defined entirely on my terms. For the first time, peace was no longer a distant hope. It was my reality. With the new boundaries firmly in place, my life began to shift into a rhythm of genuine fulfillment and purpose. Rather than using my success merely to reinforce my independence or shield myself from past wounds, I discovered something far more powerful. An opportunity to reclaim my legacy in a way my family never could have imagined. Over the next year, I channeled the resources and visibility my success granted me into creating meaningful, lasting impact. It began quietly at first. A modest investment in scholarships for young women studying technology, then partnerships with nonprofits supporting financial literacy for underserved communities. But as each project blossomed, gaining momentum and genuine support, I realized something profound. Reclaiming my family name wasn't about simply proving them wrong. It was about redefining what that name stood for, altogether. This realization crystallized one afternoon at a tech summit, where I'd been invited to deliver a keynote speech. Standing backstage, heart racing gently with nervous excitement, I caught sight of a large banner bearing my name prominently displayed across the stage backdrop. Marcie Whitaker, founder, CEO, innovator, philanthropist. Seeing my surname there felt surreal, simultaneously familiar and foreign. My family had wielded that name as a weapon of control, manipulation, and exclusion, but here, illuminated brightly, celebrated publicly, it represented something entirely new. It stood for empowerment, generosity, and resilience. Stepping onto the stage, I felt an unexpected surge of pride, not in spite of my family, but despite them. I spoke passionately about my journey, emphasizing vulnerability, authenticity, and the transformative power of reclaiming one's narrative. The audience responded warmly, their applause genuine, heartfelt, echoing softly as I exited the stage, deeply moved. Afterward, while mingling with attendees, a gentle voice interrupted my thoughts. Turning, I saw an older woman, her eyes kind yet serious, approaching slowly. "Marcie," she began softly, her voice slightly trembling, "I want you to know something. I followed your story closely. I grew up in a family very much like yours. Your courage in reclaiming yourself inspired me deeply. You showed me that success isn't about escaping who you are, it's about redefining who you become. Her words resonated powerfully, landing softly yet profoundly within me. Thank you, I said gently, emotion catching briefly in my voice. Honestly, I'm still discovering that myself, but I believe it deeply. She nodded warmly, smiling gently. Well, never doubt that your story matters deeply. You're creating something bigger than just your own success. You're building a legacy worth passing on. Her words lingered in my thoughts long after the event concluded, becoming a quiet mantra, guiding future decisions. Legacy was no longer just about personal triumph. It was about making genuine, lasting change, rooted deeply in compassion and understanding. Over the following months, I expanded my philanthropic efforts, creating foundations supporting education, innovation, and mental health awareness. Each initiative bore my family name intentionally, transforming it from a source of pain into a symbol of hope and empowerment. Cassie supported me fiercely through each new step, joining my advisory board and guiding strategic decisions with gentle wisdom and unwavering friendship. Darren and Tyler contributed their skills eagerly, each sharing expertise to amplify our impact. Even Amy volunteered regularly, her boundless energy inspiring everyone involved. Together, we transformed pain into purpose, shaping a legacy far stronger and more meaningful than the one I'd inherited. As the foundation's impact grew, something unexpected happened. I began receiving messages from extended family members, distant cousins, whose memories of Connie and Leonard's branch of the family tree were marked by similar patterns of dysfunction, neglect, and emotional cruelty. They reached out quietly, cautiously, expressing gratitude for finally giving our family name a new narrative. One afternoon, I received a particularly moving email from a cousin I'd barely known, Hannah Whitaker. She wrote honestly about the shame she'd carried, feeling trapped by our family's toxic legacy. Marcie, your courage changed everything for me. Watching you reclaim our family name showed me that our past doesn't have to define our future. For the first time, I feel proud to be a Whitaker. Thank you for creating a legacy worth claiming. Her words moved me deeply, highlighting just how powerful genuine transformation could be. I responded warmly, inviting her involvement in our initiatives, eager to connect authentically, finally building a family rooted in mutual respect and shared purpose. One evening, Cassie and I sat together, quietly reflecting on the changes we'd both witnessed over the past year. She smiled softly, eyes warm. It's incredible, isn't it, Marcie? How you've taken the very things meant to break you and used them to build something powerful, meaningful. I nodded gently, feeling genuine gratitude swell deeply within. Honestly, Cass, I never imagined it possible. For years I thought escaping my family would be victory enough, but now, seeing this legacy we're creating, it's far more meaningful than simply escaping pain. It's about genuinely transforming it. Cassie squeezed my hand warmly, voice soft and sincere. And that's why your story inspires so deeply. It's authentic, rooted in real pain yet transformed into real purpose. Her words resonated profoundly, reaffirming my path clearly. My family's manipulation, neglect, and betrayal had shaped my early years, casting shadows of self-doubt and invisibility. But they'd unknowingly also given me resilience, determination, and fierce independence, qualities that fueled my genuine success, far beyond mere financial wealth. Now, standing firmly within the legacy I'd reclaimed, I understood clearly. My true success wasn't merely escaping my family's grasp, it was transforming their painful legacy into something authentically beautiful, inspiring, and genuinely empowering for others. The Whitaker name was no longer a burden. It was a beacon of hope, resilience, and transformation, reclaimed fully and powerfully by my own hands. As I sat quietly in my favorite corner cafe, sipping coffee and watching people pass by in streams of muted colors and bustling lives, I felt an unfamiliar yet comforting sense of peace settling deeply within me. The past year had been transformative, filled with emotional battles, quiet triumphs, and profound realizations. My life now bore little resemblance to the painful isolation I'd known growing up. Instead, it reflected authenticity, strength, and genuine purpose. Glancing around the cafe, I noticed a young woman seated nearby, tapping nervously on her laptop, her brow furrowed in quiet frustration. Watching her struggle with what seemed to be a challenging moment brought a gentle smile to my lips, an echo of my younger self, chasing dreams quietly yet stubbornly, pushing against invisible barriers built from doubt and expectations. I recognized something powerful in that moment. My story wasn't unique, yet its telling mattered profoundly. The struggles I'd faced, the manipulations I'd overcome, the boundaries I'd learned to set, these were experiences many others quietly shared, often feeling utterly alone. If my story could help even one person realize their worth didn't depend on external validation, then every painful moment I'd endured was worth it. That evening, reflecting quietly at home, I finally allowed myself to confront something I'd been avoiding: my feelings toward my biological family. Not anger or bitterness, but genuine sadness for the choices they'd made, the conditional love they'd offered, and the joy they'd forfeited in pursuit of control and appearances. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but acceptance. A quiet acknowledgement that their actions weren't mine to carry anymore. Their inability to genuinely support and love me wasn't a reflection of my worth. It was a reflection of their limitations, their fears, their unresolved insecurities. Understanding this brought clarity, easing a burden I'd carried silently for too long. Cassie called later that night, sensing something reflective in my voice immediately. "You sound thoughtful, Marcie. Everything okay?" I smiled gently, warmth radiating from the quiet strength I'd cultivated. "Everything's good, Cass. Actually, better than good. I think I finally understand what genuine peace feels like." Cassie's voice softened warmly, understanding deeply. "I'm so glad, Marcie. You've worked incredibly hard to reach this place." After our call, I sat quietly, absorbing the gentle stillness around me. My life, once defined by painful invisibility, conditional love, and the relentless pursuit of external validation, now felt clear, authentic, and fully my own. I'd reclaimed not only my name but my sense of self, creating a legacy far more meaningful than mere financial success. And yet, despite the significance of external achievements, I realized deeply in that moment the most powerful validation wasn't public recognition or approval. It was the quiet certainty within myself that I was enough. I'd always been enough, even when my family refused to acknowledge it. Peace wasn't about proving my worth, it was knowing it, clearly, quietly, authentically within myself. As I turned off the lights, settling comfortably beneath the familiar comfort of blankets, I felt gratitude bloom softly within me. Gratitude for the struggles that strengthened me, for the boundaries I'd learned to create, for the chosen family whose unconditional love healed deeply, and most importantly, for the courage I'd found to finally embrace my fully, exactly as I was. My family's conditional acceptance no longer mattered. Their manipulative demands, their greedy attempts at reconciliation, all faded gently into the background, powerless to affect the genuine peace I'd discovered. In the end, I'd learned something profoundly simple yet incredibly powerful. True success isn't measured by external accomplishments alone. It's found in the quiet spaces within ourselves, in the courage to live authentically, and in the unconditional love of people who genuinely value and support us. I was Marcie Whitaker, tech entrepreneur, philanthropist, survivor of conditional love, and creator of an authentic legacy. But most importantly, I was finally visible, fully seen, fully accepted, and fully at peace within myself. Have you ever felt invisible, quietly striving for acceptance from those who refuse to truly see you? Maybe you're facing a struggle similar to mine, caught between conditional approval and your own truth. If so, know that your story matters deeply. Every silent battle, every small triumph, they all shape you, empowering you to define success on your own terms. I shared my journey not just to reveal my struggles, but to remind you that genuine peace and validation don't come from others' approval. They come from within. It's okay to set boundaries, to reclaim your identity, and most importantly, it's okay to surround yourself with people who genuinely love you for who you are, not what you offer. Now, I want to hear from you. Share your stories in the comments below. Tell me about your moments of courage, your quiet battles, and how you've learned to define success on your own terms. If my journey resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to define success on their own terms. Let's build a community of support, authenticity, and genuine self-worth together. Always remember, you are enough, exactly as you are. Your worth is never negotiable, and your peace comes from embracing your true self. Thank you for being here, for listening, and most importantly, for being authentically you.